over the years, were there any foods that you personally enjoyed that you restricted at some point or you stopped consuming because somebody told you, like, oh, well,
Oh
like
yeah.
XYZ is bad. Like what
Man,
foods?
when I first started, man, I was definitely on that paleo train, man. I was in it, and I would like the people I hung out with were in it. I remember going to a restaurant, and this was like OG CrossFit days, right? Like 2010 when people wore Vibrams, right? Like the feet shoes.
People ever got feet shoes and they doing a Whole30 every day?
Yeah, no, for real. So I remember being at a restaurant and I had some bread, and one of my gym mates was like, "Are you really gonna eat that? Like, seriously? Don't you know like what this is? Like, it's like gonna fucking kill you, right?" Like, and I mean, I gave up a lot of things that I loved eating. Like, my favorite food in the world is spaghetti, man. And pizza. Like, I love. Now I can't do pizza anymore because dairy, but yeah, no, for real. Like, but I distinctly remember preparing for a weightlifting competition. And I don't think I've told a lot of people this, but I was doing a really restricted diet. Calories were low, and I couldn't really eat a whole lot of foods, even though it was supposed to be like flexible eating. I remember one time I got so fed up, I went to the grocery store, bought like all these foods that I like literally was not supposed to eat and have been restricting, like Oreos, potato chips, all that stuff. And I straight up like sat in my room and ate it all. And yeah, I mean, that had never happened to me before ever. I never experienced any kind of like that kind of experience with food. And I can definitely empathize with people who have, disordered eating patterns, because like I was headed in that direction. And that's what happens, I think, when you are super, super strict on food choices and create all these rules about things. It can backfire. It can backfire in a really, really negative way.
How many clients would you say over the years have you worked with that were coming from kind of like that, hey, I'm paleo or I'm low carb? How many clients, again, not looking for like a specific number, but it's like, would you say majority of people come to you having similar things where it's like, yo, yeah, I'm afraid of eating carbs, or I'm afraid of eating.
So many people are afraid of eating something. Like, it doesn't matter if it's like carbs, or it could be fats because they, whatever, or, there's always something that's out there that's being pushed as a boogeyman, right? Like right now, I think it's like seed oils, right? Yeah, and so like
canola oil.
Yeah, so there's so much out there of that, and the truth of the matter is that, again, like, one, we don't know a whole lot of stuff, but two, it's like if we can't expect, if we like something and we enjoy it and it makes us feel good, fine. We don't have any issues with it, and it can support our goals and support our health. Then yeah, maybe that's something we should eat. And maybe if you don't feel comfortable with eating it often, okay, eat less of it. But if you sit there and say you can never have it again, that's where the problems typically come to fruition.
Well, and also think about it, right? Like, how much messaging is there that, and again, like back in the day, like I fell into this too, but it's like the whole concept that, oh, food is just fuel, or, food is this just one thing. And it's like, well, the reality is, though, when
there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, like when we take food and we try to put that restriction of like, oh, food is just fuel. Well, no, like especially around holidays or stuff like that, is like, food is connection, food is tradition, food is culture. Again, it's like if something brings you joy, like let's keep eating it, right? And so it's like, it's so tough because there's like levels to nutrition, right? And so it's like, well, who are we talking about specifically when we say like, oh, well, it's like there's no good or bad foods. And it's like, well, truly, it's like so much of nutrition coaching is figuring out what are the things you enjoy that bring you joy, and how do we keep doing those? And then also like at what percentage level or what frequency does that look like? Because it's like,
Yeah.
well,
And what
hey,
amount?
listen, like,
Yeah.
like if you want to be super lean and super shredded, well, you probably can't like drink, multiple times a week and, go out to the bars and go, do all these things. It's like, what is our give? What's our take? Ultimately, what do we want food to look like in that regard? What are the things and what type of lifestyle do we want to live in terms of like the partying spectrum and dining out and eating at restaurants and all that stuff? It's like so much of nutrition is really just figuring out what are the things you want to do, specifically what are your goals, and then we do have to align to those. But it's like even if you talked about me personally, it's like man, it's like what sector of my life do you want me to dial back? But it's like way back in the day, I was in the same boat. Paleo and Whole30 were such big parts of kind of the CrossFit community way back in like the 2012, 2014 era. And so it's like, for me, I remember literally thinking that sweet potatoes were a dessert because I'd be like, oh my God,
If you
like
go on TikTok, you'll see that shit though.
like again, 100, like everything is cyclical, right? But it's like, everything I was doing at the time was so high fat. So it's like I was eating so much nut butter. I was doing bulletproof coffee. God freaking bless that sector of life, right? Like blending butter and MCT oil in your coffee. I'm glad that like stopped being a trend, and we learned there was nothing magical about that, right? But it's like I definitely align with spending a big sector of my life being afraid of eating carbs, and then with that came, well, okay, I'm doing all this high intensity exercise. I'm training for hours and hours on end, doing this 5-6 days a week. Well, yeah, I felt like dog shit because I'm trying to drive this car with no fuel in the tank, right? So it's like for so many people, I think that's just it's why I'm such a big proponent of educational content, is because education equals empowerment, and it allows us and affords us the opportunity to be the CEO, to show up and do those things and make changes. Because again, it's like, well, how many people are afraid of carbs? Oh, well, you encourage them to start eating more food, start eating more calories. And it's like, oh shit, like I didn't have to feel this way and I just didn't even realize, right? So it's like for so many people, a lot of times it's just like you gotta go, the only way to is through. Like sometimes you just gotta, you have to just understand it enough and show up afraid and do it. And same thing, it's like I remember that. Like I remember I'd like start eating a little more carbs, and it was like you were almost like waiting for your body to betray you, right? Like, oh, is the scale gonna go up? Oh, am I gonna gain weight? And then you see, oh, well, actually, I ate a little bit more carbs and I feel a lot better. I still don't feel great, but I do feel better. Like maybe we're onto something. It's like understand that nutrition is so personal and that it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It's like everybody is going to have individual variances on how many carbs they eat in a day, how much fat they need in a day. All of these things. Like nutrition is so individualized. So it's like you just got to get started. Like you got to get messy, and then you have to start testing. It's like if there's one thing I do appreciate about my nutrition journey over the years, it's that I've literally tried everything. It's like if I go back to college, well, it was the era of like 100-calorie everything, right? It was like the little 100-calorie, I was gonna say the little 100-calorie snack packs. And so it's like, I remember, like at the time I wasn't like woke about my nutrition, right? It was like, okay, I know that macaroni and cheese and ramen and Subway sandwiches like ain't doing the dirty. Okay, so like let's try to do something different. So it's like I fell into the market of I was buying Special K cereal, I was buying all these low calorie, 100-calorie, this and that. Well, fast forward over time, I feel like shit. I keep like unintentionally overeating because, well, yeah, now I can recognize that surface level, I wasn't eating enough food. So compounded over time, you're going to the gym, you're being active, you don't have enough gas in the tank. Well, guess what, right? It's like your body is going to auto correct that because your body has one job. Your body says, yo,
keep your ass alive.
I keep your ass alive, right? So it's like, here I was, I kept having this overeating. And at the time, I even identify with the whole like, oh, actually, like I binged yesterday or something. It's like, well, yes, that's a whole nother, topic for a different day. But it's like, well, how much of that accidental overeating or that uncontrollable eating also happens when we're just consistently under eating, or we're trying to hit, a certain calorie target that
Or
doesn't
just,
serve
like
us.
cutting calories way too fast or too aggressively. And yeah.
And so it's like, fast forward, like, okay, I feel like shit. I'm eating all this low calorie stuff. And I remember one day I was finally just like, hey, listen, like, this ain't it. Like, I'm just going to go buy regular bread. I'm going to go buy like literally regular everything. Right. So it was like, I just went and I stopped trying to make everything diet or low calorie or whatever. And there was like, oh shit. I'm just not hungry now because I'm eating less processed stuff. I'm eating more, whole foods that are also higher calorie. And oh, well, now I'm not, having these accidental overeating things. So it's like, how much of that that's so common, right? It's like for so many people, we don't know what our maintenance calories are. We don't know how many calories we need in a day to support the things we're doing, because that target is always moving. It's always changing. It's always changing in, relativity to all of our stuff. So it's like, same thing. It was like, I went through the sector of, I did 2 Whole30s. And I remember both times that I like signed up for them at the CrossFit gym, it was like, yeah, January 1, I'm going to do this. And the same shit would happen. It'd be like day 10, day 13 or 14.
You over
and
it.
Yeah. And it would just be like, you'd like fuck up one meal and then and it'd keep going. And then you just be like, oh, well, I guess we're not doing this. And same thing, it's like, I would keep like trying to be like, oh, you just need to be more motivated. Oh, you just need to get back on the bus or whatever it is. And then it was like, well, fast forward now, I realize, well, bless it, LCK. It's like, here you were again, a super active individual. And I do think that, again, it's like with nutrition, everything can have application. Is the application, in line with what you need it to be. I do think that Whole30 can potentially be an incredible option for someone if they, if we suspect that we have food intolerances, or we might have, problematic
or
food
just
system.
eat a diet that's very high in processed foods, or just
a lot of fast food.
A lot of fast foods, a lot of sugary foods, drinks, stuff like that. Just getting back to eating regular food.